evening, everybody, and welcome to the Sports Exchange here on the WSAN Network. My name is Scott Morganroth, and we are pleased to welcome a special guest tonight, Mike Mominey. And Mike is the athletic director for Nova Southeastern University. And Mike, thanks a lot for being on the broadcast. We appreciate it.
Appreciate it. I appreciate being on and being on the show for my inaugural time, so I look forward to it.
Yeah, me too. We're looking for a lot more, but this is a great beginning for us. So with that said, and I transition in the word beginning, Mike, let's start from the beginning when you were hired as baseball coach and had a great 10-year run. 300 wins, current MLB players like J.D. Martinez, Mike Byers, Miles Mikolas, and this team actually had a record 37 wins in 2009. How much did you relish this?
Well, I think, in the moment, so I appreciate you pointing that out. So, my first opportunity at Nova Southeastern as a young coach back then, a head coach, college coach for sure, was, to take over the Nova Southeastern program. But it probably, I didn't relish a lot of that until I was done coaching and transitioned full-time into the athletic director job in 2011. But, I had a lot of fun those 10 years. We had a lot of great kids, and certainly credit to those kids and my assistant coaches. But, that group in particular that I'm certainly proud of, and it's really neat to stay connected with those young men, and they continue to represent Nova Southeastern and really the South Florida baseball community so well as they pursue their dream as Major League Baseball players.
How much do you currently stay in touch with not only these players, but a lot of the ones that have actually left the program, and whether they're playing active ball or they're actually just out there trying to make a living these days?
Well, as much as I can, I guess is the general question. And God's honest truth, about an hour ago, I heard from a former player from back in 2000, those same years, not a name that anybody would recognize, but it's really neat, right? It's really a special relationship in our business to be a coach and to have that. And you would only hope that you made some impact, enough of an impact for them to stay in touch with you, and you certainly develop a different relationship. I guess I've been doing this long enough, or I'm old enough to know now that, most of the time they call me up and, this young man, Brian Valencia, a young man from Archbishop McCarthy High School, he just called me because he closed on his first house and he's having his second baby. So, I don't know if that's age. It's still pretty cool to stay connected that way. So it's really gratifying. And again, we try to teach our student athletes while, they're playing for us at Nova, and we'll get into, some of the other sports. But these baseball kids, it certainly was a special time in my career. And that was my avenue to where I am today. And it's always been in my heart. And again, just had so many great players, and, which resulted into having some great results on the field.
Few people realize that in South Florida, or maybe in more than we want to believe, that there's a lot of good programs in the area. For example, up the road, 995, Lynn University is a solid Division II program. And I can't forget Florida Atlantic University. They put out a great program over the years with John McCormack and Kevin Cooney. And, of course, a program that you've developed at Nova Southeastern University. How do you like to be lumped into an area where you have three magnificent programs?
Well, I think it's great. I think it's one of the things that drew me, one, to South Florida, moving from Northeast Ohio, but two, to take on a program and take over a program at Nova Southeastern. We were just transitioning into NCAA Division II, a member of the Sunshine State Conference, right? So, you mentioned Lynn University is a member of our conference. A very good friend of mine, Rudy Garbalosa, does an unbelievable, amazing job, in Boca at Lynn University. And then just on the other side of 95, another dear friend, Johnny McCormick. Mac and I sort of grew up when I was a high school coach. I got to know him pretty well because he recruited a lot of my kids at Chaminade Madonna High School here in Hollywood. But Mac does a phenomenal job at FAU, and I guess we competed against each other from a recruitment standpoint. But the tradition of South Florida, if you looked on people's rosters, not only, the collegiate level, but the high school programs that are developing players and the great coaches, and really, the great institutions, whether it's high school or college, and then you see those kids, not only play at a high level. We are in one of the hotbeds, some argue the hotbed of amateur baseball. So it was always fun to be part of, and still continue to be part of it.
Yeah, let's not lose sight of the fact that Kevin Cooney did a marvelous job with that as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. No, just, and then John, of course, being his, longtime assistant, but Kevin, I didn't get to know him as well. It was about the time I was coming on, he was transitioning me off, but I knew him, out off the field a little bit, but tremendous reputation. And again, just great tradition in college baseball, just in this small, local area.
Okay, Mike, what was it like for you to be involved with a dual role as athletic director and still coach baseball for 9 years? That's a long time, and I give you credit for being able to do it. It's not easy to do a dual role in anything. Well, I don't care what level of competition you're in, whether it's college, pros, whatever. One job tough enough, but how do you do two and do them very well?
Well, I appreciate the compliment, and as far as doing it well, you probably ask some others how well I really did it. But again, to do the dual role, it was, it just wound up becoming pretty natural, right? I started as a baseball coach, and the athletic director that hired me had moved on actually to the University of South Florida. But, the President Ray Farrow at the time, had approached me about, taking on an administrative role. I'm not sure how he heard that. I was an athletic director in high school, but that's certainly a little different, at the collegiate level. But, doing the dual role, I guess one of those things, again, in the moment. And I think when you love someone, when you love your job, it doesn't seem like to work, and you love the people that you're working with, and you love your university. For those 8 or 9 years, to be quite honest with you, after I transitioned full time into the athletic director role, I was like, wow, did I really just do that? And again, it takes so much support, around you, not only at Nova, my Nova family, but certainly my personal family and my wife of 26 years and my 2 kids, right? You still have to have balance. So it didn't leave a lot of time for some free time, but my free time was always still inclusive of my Sharp family and, my home family. So it was, it was crazy. I'm one that, is not afraid to work at, and burn it at both ends. And again, as we were building this program, we were able to pull it off. And again, with committed people and building a culture but, as it transitioned, a few years later, and the school got bigger and the program got bigger. But I loved it. I loved every moment. I still miss, coaching to today. And mostly I miss the closer relationships with, the student athletes. But I still get a taste of that as a small school athletic director.
Mike, when I looked at some stats, and I had to look at them twice, okay, and this is really what impressed me a great deal. How proud of you that your athletic department has 36 conference titles, 8 NCAA titles, plus the fact that your student population has increased from 150 in 2002 to over 380 currently, including your dance squad. I mean, that's over 50%, and I didn't major in math, okay? But it doesn't take a rocket scientist to realize that 150 to 380 is a bit of a hike.
Yeah, well, I appreciate it, and again, I guess I wasn't counting in the moment, and there's times I reflect and say, wow, did that all happen? But again, it was a vision and a plan as far as joining NCAA Division II, and then adding, we had at one time 7 programs, and today we have 18. So it was a process. It was the growth. Again, I point to all the way to our president Ray Farrow at the time, and now our current president, Dr. George Hanbury, who have been incredibly supportive of intercollegiate athletics at Nova Southeastern. So again, with vision, with great people, it was busy, and as far as like handling student athletes and, adding teams, and, I could, another day we can talk about, the addition of men's and women's swimming, which is our most recent 10 years ago. And, women's crew, I like telling stories about the women's crew because I remember the president talked to me about it. I said, Mr. President, I've never seen, I have to be honest with you, I've never seen crew, and I'm not quite sure. So I had to do some studying. But again, to be part of the growth of the university and the athletic program, it's been a tremendous amount of fun. It's been fun to bring people in to the athletic department, first-time head coaches, not just first-time head coaches. How about, first-time coaches of a program? I had the great pleasure of hiring, I guess it's 6 or 7, I guess, coaches that started a program. It's just really cool, right? When you talk about building tradition, we got to start it from the ground up. And, obviously a lot of challenges for that, right? You don't have an alumni base, you don't have a donor base, but I think it's really cool to start things from the beginning and build those out. And now, again, don't often think about it, but, it's crazy to think some of these programs, started, under my leadership, again, with a lot of help of great people and great coaches and great student athlete. But I guess maybe I'm a man of firsts. So maybe that drives me internally, and certainly seeing our kids be successful both in the classroom and on the field is what makes it all worth it.
Well, it's amazing how you say that, because I'm like you, okay? In addition to us being fellow Midwesterners, I like to take a situation and build it from scratch and turning it into something. And I feel like you and you've started it, and I'm in the process of working on it, and we've made an awful lot of progress in the time that we've done it. So if anybody can relate to what you're talking about, Mike, mark my word, I can do it. And I tell you what, that's what's making this more and more enjoyable. As the Tribune has begun their relationship with Nova Southeastern, and I expect us to grow exponentially with that said. But with that said, okay, I had an opportunity to see a basketball game under Jim Crutchfield. So now let's talk about the basketball program. They've also made tremendous strides under your watch, especially with the hiring of Jim Crutchfield. Let's talk about that. I know that at one point they won 29 wins, and you guys won quite a few wins this year, but unfortunately COVID-19 fixed any postseason aspirations that you guys had.
Yeah, so, men's basketball is certainly the most recent success story as far as the team. No disrespect to, everyone that's played, at Nova over the years. And I think that just, is just one more success story. And I know I passed up on the earlier question, but, to have 8 national championships and 3 Sunshine State Conference championships, those national championships came in 4 different sports, with our most recent in baseball. So again, it's about, building tradition. And I know that's an often used, phrase, and building champions, but, not to sound arrogant, but, we've proven it. And, not that it's all about the wins and losses, and it's not about the rings and the banners, and that's great. But, we feel like we're being successful in both the classroom and on the courts and in the field. So, but now to talk about men's basketball, that's with the hiring of Jim Crutchfield a couple of years ago, it's just been unprecedented success. And I'm sure you've done your research on Crutch, and we met each other, and again, he's the all-time winningest coach in NCAA history by percentage. Now, again, only one person can say that, right? And that is an AD, and we're fortunate to have Crutch, and as part of our basketball program, he obviously turned it around. People can see the numbers, but he's made it fun, right? I think it's been a great fit. Him and I shook hands. Interestingly enough, people want to know how we came in touch, and it was West Liberty, which was his former institution, used to come down and play us in the Don Taft University Center, which is home of the Rick Case Arena. So our Rick Case Arena is our basketball arena, and they used to come down and play at the Christmas break or a Christmas tournament, I believe. But anyway, when we were doing the search, and it just, it was just a great marriage and a great fit. He was impressed with, the university, the facilities, the tradition. He often spoke about the tradition, and I'm sure you'll have him on at some point so he can give you his version. But remarkable, I'll call turnaround, from, if you're looking at wins and losses, but his intensity, his success, is well documented. We have a lot of fun doing it, and I'll end with talking about Coach Crutchfield. We obviously developed, maybe it's not obvious, but I believe we've developed even a friendship, even though we have the boss, coach thing and the AD coach thing. I never approached it that way, but Coach Crutchfield is not only the all-time winner in NCAA history. I always say this, and it's true, and I genuinely mean it. I mean, as good as a coach as Jim Crutchfield is, as good of a basketball coach he is, he's even a better human being. And the way his kids respond to him when he took over, obviously kids that, were from the last, under the last tenure, and then now it was just a smooth transition, and he's just done a remarkable job in his short time here.
Yeah, we actually had him on a previous edition of the Sports Exchange leading up to one of your big games, one of your finales, and he was a certainly great guy, and I had a chance to do a video with him as well, and I'm looking forward to continuing to work. It didn't hurt the fact that he came from West Virginia, and like all of us people from the North, we don't mind getting out of the cold weather and not having to shovel snow. So, I mean...
That definitely wasn't, that definitely wasn't the hard part of getting him come down here, right? And just had to take him over to Grand Oaks, and, he's a tennis golf guy, and, I said, well, that doesn't really work too well in West Virginia, man. I'm from Northeast Ohio, correct? So,
yeah, right.
so he's an avid tennis player, and again, he's got a place right across from Grand Oaks, our golf course across the street. So, but it's been great, and like I said, he's got a lot of energy. He's also, on campus and with our other coaches, and I'd be remiss not to say Jordan Fee, our just top-notch assistant Coach Jordan Fee, a Pennsylvania kid, Western Pennsylvania. So I don't know if that's a trend. I always get teased, do you do this on purpose? And I don't know how people figure out where people are from, but somehow it sort of points right back to, even on my administrative staff, these Midwestern ties. But I swear I don't do it, intentionally. Maybe it just happens, and it's meant to be.
Well, hey, it is what it is. But, yeah, Crutchfield's a super nice guy, and I'm looking forward to having him on again.
Phenomenal. Yeah, it's a shame. It's a shame, and I don't know if, do you want me to speak to that? But certainly, we were on one of those runs again and having a phenomenal season, unfortunately, with the ending for so many kids and so many programs across the country. But we were literally on a bus or boarding a bus on campus to drive to Lakeland to play at Florida Southern at the regional. And unfortunately on that March 12th was, the day that collegiate athletics shut down. So that was certainly difficult times, but, it was, we were hoping for some great things after reaching the Elite Eight last year, hoping to get back there and get a little further in the tournament.
Okay, let's go on to the next thing. You've obviously, under your regime, you have numerous new facilities that have been designed and constructed under your watch. To me, as an athletic director, I'd be extremely proud anytime you can get new facilities and being able to bolster the overall image for your program. That, to me, is quite impressive, Mike.
Well, I appreciate that. I believe we have some of the, the best facilities in the country, and I say that, and I stop there, right? The best facilities in the country, right? So I've been to, as you would imagine, a lot of campuses, and I was back in the day, spent plenty of time in the MAC conference up in the Midwest, and again, certainly down here at the Miamis and South Floridas. But I put our facilities against many others across the country. But when we set out to do this and set out, okay, what are going to be our pillars of success and how are we going to recruit the best student athletes? Anybody you talk to in this business, and I don't care if it's high school, collegiate, or professional, facilities is at least in the top three as far as having the best facilities. And whether you're talking about a student athlete experience, I can tell you facilities have helped me recruit some of the best coaches that have ever coached the game or the meet, or a swimming coach or a basketball coach or a tennis coach or a golf coach. So we're very fortunate. Once again, I'm going to point back to the support and the vision of our administration and really our great board of trustees. There's so many, and I don't want to start dropping names, but the support all the way up to our board of trustees who have supported athletics in this community for a long time, or are pillars of this community for a long time. So it sort of all came together, and because when you start building $100 million buildings like our Rick Case Arena, that just doesn't happen every day. And that's, sort of our marquee piece right now. We do have our swimming facility, our aquatic center is second to none. I've had the University of Florida, Coach Troy has been down, who's the men's Olympic coach, right? The USA Olympic coach. I mean, he came down and pulled me aside and said he couldn't believe it. So what a beautiful facility. So again, very blessed. To have that, we have plans for more upgrades and doing some things at soccer, softball, and baseball in the future. But it is certainly a point of pride. Again, I don't really think about too much, I guess, maybe when I'm driving around campus with my golf cart or taking recruits around, right, or taking students around. And that helps with the recruiting process, more than helps. I mean, sometimes that seals the deal, and you've been on campus. So I would say our facilities interwoven into the physical plant that Nova Southeastern University has become are second to none. And if you haven't visited, so I'll get a little commercial out, is if you haven't visited our campus, you should, right? It's like that ESPN thing, if you haven't seen it, you should. So if you haven't seen Nova Southeastern, come as my guest, come to a game. You'd be my guest up in the club room at a basketball game, whenever we start this thing back up, soccer game, baseball game. But you need to do, yourself a favor. We have, beautiful facilities from libraries to classrooms to athletic facilities, and it's great to be part of.
All right. Well, I will tell you this, being a University of South Florida graduate, back in the day, in the mid-'80s, we did not have a football program at all. So our marquee sports were mainly baseball as well as basketball. So with that said, okay, tell me what your biggest revenue sports are and that keep the program going.
Yeah, it's certainly different at the Division II level, and being a graduate where you're from USF, and certainly have some friends. Actually, I have two really good friends: the current athletic director at South Florida and the current athletic director at Miami. We all went to grad school together at St. Thomas University down here in Miami. But anyway, so they have a different approach, is my point, right, to revenue. So, I would say, revenue sports, we really don't look at it that way. We hope to think basketball, right, being a non-football playing school, which is the case for all of the schools in the Sunshine State Conference, 11 member institutions, all private in the state of Florida. And but none of us, have a football program. I would, again, people want to say football is a revenue sport, but I don't know if anybody's opening up their books, because that's a hard one to, to show any kind of net proceeds. But our revenue comes from different streams. Certainly, we have increased attendance at the basketball games, and I would think I like to say our revenue is, some ticket sales, but we do a good job with creating community partners and corporate partnerships. We are building some great momentum with our alumni. Part of the challenges of being a new program or having or a newer program in totality, but also having new programs and the ones we mentioned earlier that I added, you don't have that alumni base for giving. Right. So even if you're talking about swimming again, it's 10 years old, those kids have only been out of college for 6 years. Right. So it's not like I'm going to be, asking them for a whole lot, in terms of financial, support. But so I think revenue, comes in a few different ways. Like I mentioned, we do have some big time, special events, including a golf tournament. Actually, we have two different golf tournaments. Our baseball alumni golf tournament in November that raises a lot of money, and our biggest one, which we couldn't have this year, is a tournament in April that we've raised a lot of money for. It's up at PGA National. It's about 300 players, and all those dollars raised, go towards student athlete scholarship endowment fund. So, long answer to your question, I don't really look at it as revenue sports. We're still in the mode of, getting fans out, getting people on campus, and we want to be part of the university of not only recruiting student athletes, but recruiting, people in the community to come and watch games or come to other events besides athletics, and ultimately maybe, having their son or daughter attend Nova Southeastern as a student.
Well, that's a fair answer. Well, if I'm understanding you correctly, you don't have a particular sport that's your revenue sport. It's just your goal is to make sure that you spread it around where they come out collectively to support all the programs, not a particular one. Because I gotta ask you this: is there any particular time that you guys celebrate a homecoming?
Yeah. So no, that's an interesting question, right? So yeah, we do. So again, it's probably no different at any other non-football playing. So we do it around basketball. So, and again, this is all respect to all the, and they've already had a lot of success to all of our programs, but the fact of the matter is basketball is our best spectator sport. So maybe the best way to say revenue sport is spectator sport. I would say basketball followed by baseball and soccer, right? I mean, we're in South Florida. We get great attendance at our soccer matches, whether it's the local clubs and, or just students, and then basketball. So, I would say it's spread out that way, but I would say basketball has become, right, winning helps that. Our women's basketball team, and I don't want to miss out on them. I mean, Coach Leanne Freeland, who would also be a great guest for you. I mean, she's had an unbelievable run herself, right, and reaching and winning, 4 regional championships and reaching the Elite Eight and then the Final Four one time in women's basketball. And now we have both programs going. And, one fun fact, 2 years ago, we were one of just 2 programs, I believe, nationally that had both their men's and women's basketball team in the Elite Eight at any division.
Well,
so that was pretty neat.
Let me stay on this for a moment, and with the basketball theme. I remember a long time ago when Denny Crum coached the University of Louisville men's basketball team, and they were the revenue sport carrying football until Howard Schnellenberger went ahead and took over, built that marvelous facility. So I guess there's a history of basketball supporting a specific athletic program until ultimately down the road it changes the other way. So what you have going really is the spectator. Certainly basketball draws more spectator, but I think you can relate to where I'm talking about, that football isn't always the revenue producer. You can have a basketball program really strong, and they can carry the other ones, and they can look awfully well doing it, can't they?
Oh, absolutely. No, absolutely. And again, I don't want to call anybody out on this, but I'll explain myself. But I mean, we'll use an Ohio example, if you will, right? The University of Dayton.
Right.
I mean, is Dayton known, their basketball program, and then it is very well known. I mean, Butler, I don't know if anybody knows, but Butler has a non-scholarship football program. Dayton has a non-scholarship. So again, it does happen. So yeah, I think that's, definitely a way. And again, I don't know numbers. I don't know enough people in the ACC, but the tradition of the ACC, I mean, wouldn't you think that the Dukes and North Carolinas, are awfully close to, or in some years at least, awfully close to being more or as good of a revenue generator as their football programs? I would think yes. So again, I think it's what you decide to say what's your marquee sport. But again, it also has to align with, societal type things, right? I mean, what is, it's just more of a basketball. It's just more spectator sport, whether that's because there's more games and, people are more interested or more youth play it. It's just an easier sell, if you will. And again, the baseballs and soccer is really because I think those would be good anywhere because we've had good programs, but because you're in South Florida, I think there's going to be a natural fan base, depending on what community you're in.
Yeah, I don't think baseball actually gets enough credit for being a great sport. But boy, when you talk about the prospects that come out of here, whether it's Tampa or whatever, baseball is the most underrated sport of all of them. But yet you find a lot of professional players coming from that sport. With that said, okay, you created the Nova Southeastern University Athletic Hall of Fame. Tell me a little bit about that.
Sure. Yeah, no, one of the fun things, it was a lot of work. It was probably 2 years in the making between, putting a committee together and doing our research of like, let's do a Hall of Fame, right? It's not like I inherited, a program that had a Hall of Fame. But, we made a decision, I guess, I don't know, I'd have to pull it up on a website. I should know this, but, 10, 11 years, where we said, okay, where as an administration, what are our points of tradition? Where can we start building this tradition again? And, outside the sports, how do we as a department? And again, we had the great fortune of winning. So we had some great people, student athletes, as you'll see. So, the former athletic director, former president, some other people that we thought we can recognize that, who got started. So, when we looked at different models, we looked at a lot of different models, and I'm going to credit, I don't know if they'll hear this broadcast, but they'll like hearing their name. They're no longer with me, but they're very successful professionals. Dr. Bob Pryor, who's up at Northeastern University on the academic side now, and Dr. Kim Carbo, who's now with the Joe DiMaggio Foundation and Special Events. They were two of the key people when we were starting this, but formed a committee and it was really built out of tradition, right? I mean, it's a thing, that different colleges have, and we looked at Miami's, I remember, particularly close, and I think I saw some South Florida information. Bowling Green, my undergrad program, I was able to get some information, but what better way to recognize your former student athletes or coaches and then honor them in a Hall of Fame, right? So by the time we put all that criteria together, and once again, we're fortunate enough to not only, put some great student athletes that wore the Sharks uniform, some of them are very well known.
Okay, well, let's go back to a point that we touched on briefly, but now we'll get into more detail, Mike. What was it like to go from an NAIA program to a Division II, the transition? I know that some schools can't do it, but evidently you guys have done it, and you've done it pretty well.
Well, and I appreciate that, and it was tough, and I could probably touch on two things, right? Because I was the baseball coach and the athletic director at the time, but it was very difficult. And all due respect to NAIA, but when you jump into Division II and jump into the Sunshine State Conference, which we're currently in, which is arguably, the best. We call ourselves the Conference of Champions. So the Sunshine State Conference, and you can look at the rich tradition and history of national championships in every sport, and also competitive academically. But, speaking just about athletically, I mean, we took our lumps early on, and I appreciate you recognizing, my wins and losses earlier in the broadcast, but, look at those first couple years, 18 and 36. And, I wasn't sure, I started questioning myself a little bit. I hadn't been around that too much, but it took some time, to maybe catch. It didn't take too much time, but it took some time because the level of competition, and again, all due respect to the NAIA programs, I absolutely love NAIA. I spent 4 years there at St. Thomas University as an assistant coach and did my graduate work there, my master's in sport administration. So I absolutely love that and love the people. But the bottom line is it's the resources. It's scholarship resources, it's coaches resources, it's support staff resources. So, with that typically comes, higher level competitiveness. So, there was a 4-year process. It was already in year one by the time I got there as the baseball coach, and then I took over with 2 years remaining. So again, 4-year process. I believe that process is still the same when you're transitioning NAI to D2. I believe it's the same now as it Division 3 to 2 or 2 to 1. So it's usually a 4-year, which you need, right? You need to put a lot of things in place. First thing you got to put in place is the financial resource, and you got to have that commitment. So jumping into Division 2, which is a scholarship division, and I'll make sure people clear, unlike, similar to Division 1, it's not as many scholarships, but we do give athletic scholarships. And so we do spend money on that from the recruitment process, where Division 3 is a non-athletic scholarship model. But NAI scholarships, just not as quite as many. But as we've gone through that, we had a 4-year plan that went along with that 4-year transition. Again, I took over 2 years into that, so we were making that move. So with that said, you still have to be able to hire coaches who can recruit the best kids not only on the field but in the classroom, and you got to entrust. They're going to bring in the best kids that'll be competitive, and then you sort of just, jump in the pool, I guess, man. We just did it, and we said, listen, we know where we want to get. We may take our lumps. We may have to take a couple of steps back before we take a step forward in terms of competitiveness. And, again, we were fortunate in some of our sports to have some early success. And we just kept going down. We just kept going down that road. And, it's not easy to win at the amateur level or at any level. But I've always said from the beginning, I wanted to build a program that not only was successful, but sustained success over time. And to this point, we've been fortunate to do so.
Well, let's go back to an old analogy that we both grew up as kids. He had the big bad wolf. How many houses did he have to go through until he couldn't blow the other one down? He ended up couldn't blow down the brick one, but the other two he didn't have any problem with. Well, and your goal was to build a brick house and not sell for that. Anybody in life will realize that there's growing pains, learning curves. You're going to have a lot of sleepless hours. And I'm sure you had your fair share of sleepless hours too, but you ultimately knew that while the losses were more than the wins early on, you were learning, and as Gene Hackman would say in the movie Hoosiers, let's see what hand I've been dealt, so that you can turn it into a championship caliber program. And when I say that, I don't mean it just athletically, Mike. It's one thing to be able to perform well athletically, but you better make sure your kids are smart enough to do it academically. And I think that's the one thing that tends to get overlooked in any sport. You know what? These kids are there to get an education first. And athletics, to me, is icing on the cake because they're getting that education. And that's where so many people don't get it. And I think that when I look at some of the things that Michael Stambaugh went ahead and sent me, and I was impressed with a lot of your academic accolades to complement your sports accomplishments, you got to have the whole pie, not half of it, or you don't have a chance.
I totally agree with that. And again, that was one of our pillars of success. And, in talking to, all the people that we needed to put together and say, hey, if we're going to do this, it needs to look this way. And I do say, it's not by accident. I just absolutely love they use this phrase more than ever, student athlete. And there's a reason why it's called student athlete. And I do think you see more people, talking in that language. And if you get people talking like that, again, it's a mindset. It's certainly, bringing kids in that are not only athletically talented, but we're at a private institution with a very good education with, some really tough majors. And so, we have kids that are marine biology majors and pre-med majors and psychology, and a really competitive business program. So it's not like, again, you want to reflect back to our days, there is, and that's at many programs around the country, but I'm so proud of our academic accomplishments. And in fact, I'm more proud, to be quite honest with you, of our academic achievement over time. Because again, I think that's another thing that's hard to carry over a lot of years, is our academic achievements. And that, a lot of times starts with GPA, the grade point average of the department, of all the teams. And, the more teams you have, I guess, you could look at it one way or the other. I thought that was a benefit, right? So let's set a goal of 3.0 as, that's our standard. And then we started hitting that, and I moved it to 3.1. I can give you some hot off the presses, and this isn't even public yet because it's not on our website. But we just finished this academic year with our highest grade point average ever in the history of the school, in the history of the program, and that's a 3.33.
Congratulations. And by the way,
as a department. So again, if you can't hear it in my voice, I get the chills. I know we're at a distance on the phone here, but I'm just so happy. And, that speaks, as I send it over to my president, my COO, and my provost, the president and provost this evening, it just speaks to the character and quality of our students. But it also speaks to the character and quality of our coaches who are bringing these kids in, along with the faculty, right? So the academic achievements, because, like you said, that's what we're here for. And yeah, I'm the most competitive guy, as competitive guy as you'll run into. I love to win. But at the end of the day, it's about, getting that education. That education is something they'll never be able to take away from you. And we talk about that. I talked about it as a young coach. I was taught that a long time ago. I'm not saying I always followed that mantra, but as a student athlete, but I can tell you when I got into a position of leadership, that degree on your wall, boys, and girls, that's something that'll never be able to take away from you. This athletic thing's gonna, it's going to end at some point. So make sure you take care of your academics and your education, and make mom and dad proud, and make yourself proud, because you will be with that accomplishment.
Congratulations. I got to give you an interesting irony. When you said 3.33, my lucky number is 33, for whatever it's worth, okay? My first
cool.
Super Bowl that I covered was Super Bowl 33, and I use 33 on a lot of the things that I do because it is my lucky number. So if ironies had to do anything, so be it. But that's something you should be very proud of, and I'm glad that we're able to get that out here so a lot more people will know about it. So with that said, okay, the NCAA's decision to restore seasons for spring sports athletes. What were your thoughts when they decided to do that?
Yeah, so, a lot of things happened really quickly. And so if you look back at March 12th, in fact, I had just traveled to, interestingly enough, Northeast Ohio for the men's and women's swimming national championships. It was in Geneva, Ohio, and I was flying up there and planned to fly back for the basketball regional in Lakeland later that weekend. But so this all went down between I don't know if I'm supposed to talk about commercial, but anyway, I'll just say a plane, from Fort Lauderdale to Cleveland, and landed, and then sort of like, all heck broke loose. And, certainly it was the first domino that fell was the NBA's decision. But again, to your question, I think it was, one of the better decisions that they've made, and not that they don't make good decisions, but I just think in the spirit of the student athletes, and again, for the NCAA to allow and to do legislative relief, and to give us the opportunity to give those kids a year back whose seasons were shortened, and again, that was specific to spring sports, For us, it was baseball, softball, golf, tennis, rowing, and track and field. So, there was a lot of kids that were affected by this. And you hate to see, anybody's season ended. We were just playing really well in baseball. We were having one of our better seasons in softball, which we hope to get to the NCAA tournament. Our tennis team was ranked top 5. They were knocking on the door last year of, at the Nationals. Our golf programs have a rich tradition, the number 1 team in the country, women's golf. We've won 4 national championships. We won a bunch of tournaments. So, when things come to a screeching halt, I think the NCAA did the best they could to at least allow institutions to restore those kids' eligibility for one more year.
All right, but with that said, though, you restore it for another year, but then you have incoming freshmen. So now you have seniors and freshmen. So on one hand, you have a dilemma on the front end, but then on the back. So how do you deal with something like that?
Yeah, well, it was interesting, right? They didn't figure that out for us. But, I love my friends at the NCAA. But again, at least it gave us some guidance, right? And that's really what they're there for.
Right.
We are the NCAA. So the 311 Division II programs across the country, we are the NCAA. And I've had the great pleasure to meet President Emmerich and, on some committees and some of the great people, up in Indianapolis. But they gave us the ability to make an institutional decision to bring kids back. So how we approached it I think it was at the time it was a lot of student athletes that affected because the season ended, but in effect it was I think it was 42 or 48 student athletes that were seniors playing on those spring sport teams. So I approached it like I do a lot of things, even being the high competitive athletic guy that I am, but we approached it from an academic perspective. We started with, having coaches talk to their student athletes and our academic services people about kids that were going to graduate this May, which was, literally last weekend. So, and again, because that needed to be a factor, right? Do they want to come back? Did they plan on coming back? Some kids had internships lined up. Some kids had jobs lined up. Some kids just knew they were going to be done with their degree and they were going to go back home to Ohio and Michigan. So we wanted to have those conversations, and we had open, honest, transparent conversations with the intent, of bringing kids back if it was for the right reasons. One of which was to either have them graduate or get them to graduation. 2, they had to want to continue, playing their sport, which most of them don't have an issue doing, but also continue, in the classroom, maybe for a graduate degree or the like. So, at the end of the day, how it shook out right now, just today, we're looking at bringing back about 8 or 9 of those 40 kids. But they were honest conversations. Of course, there's a financial piece to this, right? I mean, you still are going to honor their scholarships, and the university would have to agree to do that. So that sort of was our approach to bringing back some of the seniors. So, but I feel like we did everything we could to have an open, honest conversation with the student athlete, their particular coach, who's, really their lifeline, right? They recruited them, they're here. And, for my understanding, all the kids that, wanted to, and the coaches wanted to, and we wanted to, we're going to be able to satisfy that extra year of eligibility for those kids to come back next year.
And what about the freshmen? Let's talk a little bit about them.
Yeah, so the incoming freshmen?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
Yeah, well, now we're going through this cost savings measure, right? So, I mean, you have to, if you're going to keep, I'll use baseball. Actually, baseball is the sport that we're going to, it looks like 4 or 5 of the kids are going to return. We thought at one time it was only going to be 3, but, with the draft coming up, we're just not sure what's going to happen with that. Right. But anyway, you just have to, as part of that decision, you've got to just decide you're going to expand your rosters. But that costs more money, right? I mean, more uniforms, potentially, more people traveling. Because I haven't heard anybody that wasn't going to, satisfy those kids that we've already committed. But what it did do was it did stop us from recruiting. And then, now we can't even recruit in person. There was legislation, and I think it extends till the end of June now, that you can't even do any in person. So it sort of all worked out. But we, in our case, we didn't have to pull back any of our, scholarship offers or, letters of intent. Most of our recruiting is done. And for people out there, I mean, the athletic recruiting starts really, really early. I mean, we have kids now. I mean, we have some kids committed all the way to 22, maybe even looking at some kids in we call it that's the incoming class. So this would be 2021, but those are sophomores going in that are junior year in high school. So the recruitment process, especially at a highly competitive program with the funding that we do, that happens early. So we're just going to go with it, right? So the roster sizes are going to be bigger this year. We'll work through that, and playing time and things like that. But everyone's welcome to, we welcomed everybody in and with open arms, and because we felt like that was the right thing to do.
Well, Mike, since you're a baseball coach, what are your thoughts about the baseball draft being 5 rounds? I mean, come on, you just walked right into that one. You really did.
Yeah.
And plus the undrafted free agents.
But, I still have a lot of friends, and, from all the way up to general managers down to, scouts and player development. So right. I personally, I don't like that they had to retract, because I think just given the situation, they had already made some decisions for people that haven't followed it. They had already made some decisions to shorten up the draft. When I was back working in pro ball, I mean, the draft used to get in the early 90s. The draft used to go as long as people were picking players. And there was, I know you had some minor league baseball experience in you, Scott, and
oh, yeah.
It's just filling up rosters is what you were doing. There were 6 or 7 minor league teams, but again, they advanced it this year too. They were going to do something with the draft and shorten up the draft. Now, as a college guy, that's a good thing, only because I think that keeps kids in school longer and not sign early. So, but this particular shortening from 10 to 5 rounds, I think what I understand it to be is it's a product of probably not having a minor league season.
Right.
It's really looking that way, and that's sad, right? Because we have a lot of kids that are in the minor league system. I have neighbors, a young man who's a thriving prospect. He didn't play at Nova. He played up in Tennessee, but he's a neighbor friend, and I see him. And those guys don't have a job, if they don't play, minor league baseball. So I hate to see any opportunities taken away from kids. I hope this is just a 1-year, deal. With the draft, I do think they're going to settle on something else. But this 5 rounds, and it was awfully tough. I mean, those scouts and the pro side of things, they lost some valuable time to see kids and slot them where they thought they were going to, maybe draft them because they haven't been able to see anybody in person. Even as much to go and meet with those kids to find out a little bit more about their character or their family or whatever. So I don't like it, but I think it's a necessary evil that we're all looking at.
You ever heard of Mike Piazza? He was a late round pick. I guess he didn't turn out so bad, did he?
Yeah.
He didn't turn out so bad, did he? Oh, maybe.
No, he was okay. Yeah, he was all right. He had a pretty good career, and he had to bounce around even at a couple of different colleges in Miami-Dade. But and there's a lot of stories like that. I mean, I think about our players. I mean, only one of those guys was drafted. Miles Mikolas was drafted in the 7th round. All the other big leaguers were, 19th, 20th round. So again, I guess I'm really close to it, and you just never know because that's not an exact science. That's probably the least exact science there is out there. And I don't care what sport you're talking about. It's the draft.
Well, no question about it. So with that said, how has the athletics administration been involved in the overall university response to the crisis, like the role and the conversation, the planning, and the task forces?
Very. I mean, in our case, I believe, much of what we talked about, I believe athletics is, true part of the fabric. It's really, of the university. And again, for a lot of reasons, from academic to the students that we've turned out. So I've been very involved in, sometimes I'm not sure like many of us, not sure what day it is or what Zoom meeting I'm supposed to be on. And I wish I would have thought about this Zoom thing. I was telling my family the other day, man, I never even heard about it until this pandemic. But I'd like to be Mr. Zoom or have his stock. I can tell you that. But anyway, I'm probably, Scott, I'm on Zoom calls probably 8 to 10 hours a week as part of a task force when this first started, and that's quickly in the last 2 weeks has changed over. We're calling it fun. It's fun because it's the Return of the Sharks committee, right? The Return of the Sharks task force, and there's maybe 10 or 12 President's Council level executives, including myself, that are typically Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then they mix in a couple meetings if they're going to talk about something specific. But 300 and let's just call it for next year, since we don't have that number, 360, 370 student athletes. That's about 10, 11, 12% of our undergraduate population. who is on campus, who is undergraduate, who mostly live in the dorm. So we're a pretty good cohort of students returning back. So I would also hope to think that, athletics is going to have to be one of those things that we're going to have to figure out, right? We're sort of, when this all went down, we're at a high risk area, right? Just because of the way we train and how, basketball's played and soccer's played. So we're right in the middle of it. I have some of my athletic trainers they're on a task force on the medical side. We have some, great people, great leaders. Certainly, first and foremost, Dr. George Hanbury, our president, who's just shown an unbelievable amount of leadership, resiliency through this whole thing, because that is just a no-win position, right? A president of the university during this time. That is just, there wasn't a playbook or a class for this one. And he is Dr. Hanbury, along with, Dr. Harry Moon, our COO, and Dr. Ron Schneier, our provost, amongst many others. Just, I'm so fortunate to work and work more closely in, situations I wouldn't have never worked with them. And our medical people, Dr. Elaine Wallace, and, Dr. Moon has a, medical background. But anyway, we're doing everything we can on a daily basis. And we're having meetings, you have planning meetings, and you start planning for something, and then something changes by the end of the day or the next morning. So I believe we'll be back, soon. We've made the announcement as a university that we're planning on coming back. We start early, right? We start August 17th. It's not like back in the day, where it was always that Labor Day or whatever, but our first day of classes is scheduled for the 17th, which means our athletes would be back 10 days before that on the 7th. So it's going to be a challenge. And so, again, very, very involved with what this looks like coming on back on campus. But I think once you decide students are coming back, figuring out classrooms, residence halls, I think you're also talking about athletics. I think once you figure one of them out, you're figuring it all out.
Mike, the only thing I knew about Zoom prior to the pandemic was when I'm on the interstate, I've been accused of having a little bit of a lead foot. Okay. Zoom, okay. Zoom, roar, roar, roar. Okay. And also when I've ever had the adrenaline rush to go ahead and go on a oval or racetrack, whether it's Martin, what's the one in Virginia? I'm trying to remember. I'm drawing a blank. It doesn't make it. Martinsville, I think, is what it is. Or wherever. I love going around racetracks, and that's what I get with my Zoom adrenaline rush. Now, this thing called Zoom, I don't like it. Never heard of it before. Did it because of the fact that my family, my in-laws got in it, and then all of a sudden I had to do all these business meetings like you, and I've had to get used to it. I don't like it. I probably will not do it anymore than I have to. But like you, I'm old school. Okay, let me get my backside in front of you, look you right in the face, take care of business. But in the meantime, Zoom, Zoom, Zoom. It is what it is, man. Put my foot on the gas, and who knows what's going to happen. And I don't know if you ever knew that there were 12 commandments and not 10. Thou shalt not overpay, and thou shalt not get caught. So Moses had nothing to do with those.
That's great.
That's an interesting perspective here down the road that you and I can educate your students when I get in front of you people. So got a few more questions here to go. But just so you know here, the Sports Exchange is on the WSAN network. We are here with Nova Southeastern Athletic Director Michael Mominey, a.k.a. Mike. Okay, keep it official, keep it fun. It doesn't matter. I haven't had any jolt tonight. We're just having a jolt of a lot of fun.
That's it. I only get called Michael when I'm in trouble from my family members.
Well, don't feel too bad.
Whatever you prefer.
I get called Scotty, so it is what it is. So, all right, with that said, let's address how Nova Southeastern University Athletics, under your leadership, helped to create everybody safe, engaged, and on track to keep the Sharks moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, if it's particular to the COVID situation or just overall.
Well, break it down two ways: overall and then COVID. Why not?
Yeah, overall. I mean, I'm I know a lot of people are, but I'm a big culture guy, right? And I'm a big process guy. But how I explain those two things is, I believe people drive culture, and I just have, my senior staff and my coaches, all the way down to our graduate assistants. I mean, even though we're having these Zoom meetings, we're trying to keep people engaged, throughout this process. But you can't do that overnight. it's been a long tradition, and we always talk about in sports, and certainly at Nova, one of our sayings, leave the uniform in a better place than you found it. And I don't care if it's me as an athletic director or a head coach or a student athlete, but we always want to that's how we keep the ball moving forward. Leave the uniform in a better place than you found it. And again, you can interpret that any way you want, but the meaning behind it means, hey, somebody did it great. Somebody wore that uniform before you, but how do you raise the bar? How do you keep going and going forward? I have a lot of passionate, driven people, with a lot of experience. So COVID or no COVID, I just, I think that's what drives the engine. There's no secret sauce. It's hard work. It's dedication. I've stuck to my old school ways. I try to be some new school stuff with this new generation and do some things, to catch up with them. But I try to keep it simple. And as far as the process, and you can hear a lot of people talk about it, but, our process, to success is putting people in positions to be successful. And whether you're talking about in the weight room, whether you're just talking about, winning a game that night, hitting the game-winning hit or making the game-winning basket, swimming that, winning relay. But it also means, winning in life. I mean, we also talk about, teaching life lessons through athletics, providing an opportunity for kids to be successful in life. And again, there's so much, of course, talking about, how much sports can teach us about life. And it's so true. I know I've spent my whole life in it, but if we can have that mindset and our people and the mindset of being educators first, I mean, that's where it has to start. And again, it's about, building relationships. No one's going to remember the wins and losses until you bring it up on one of your shows. But I just hope to think that me, along with, several people that have been with me, that are with me now, that have been with me over the last 19 years, have had that mindset that, we're here to impact young men and women. And we have the great privilege on a daily basis to positively influence 18 to 22-year-olds. It's the greatest job in the world. It's not even a job. It's the greatest thing. And you talk about gratification. We talked earlier about, the alumni coming back, and they may not say it at the time because we were all 18 to 22-year-olds. We didn't appreciate what we needed to, appreciate. But if we just made a little bit of a difference in each of these young people's lives, then we've done our job. It just so happens to be that it was on the platform of athletics. So I'm proud to be a Shark, as you can tell. I'm proud of the people that we work with, and I'm mostly proud of our student athletes that we turn out on an annual basis.
Well, being a college graduate myself, I will tell you this, Mike. I paid my way through college. I wear my college ring proudly. It began at Broward Community College, which is known as Broward College now, and, of course, University of South Florida Bulls. So when you go to a university, you chose that particular place. It's not high school where, where you lived is where you had to go. So you've chosen to make that a part of you. Every time you step foot on that campus in a classroom, whether it's in an arena or whatever, if you're a Shark, you're a Shark. I'm a Bull. That's all there is to it. And we talked about the Bull being a part of I must have picked the right university of USF Bulls. I didn't know that at the time that I'd be a Bull going on here 57, but no, it kind of worked out that way.
Nothing's a coincidence, Scotty.
No, it isn't.
Nothing's a coincidence, man. I don't know. Maybe I'm a Shark. Maybe I was meant to be a Shark, even though I don't have a degree from there.
Hey, listen, I don't know. I might be being indoctrinated in your. I feel like I'm indoctrinated in your club now, but yeah, but yeah, me paying my way through college. That's exactly what it's all about. Whether you're a student athlete or a student, period, you take ownership of that university, just like that university takes ownership of you. You're a part of them, and they're a part of you, and that's the thing that we can both feel very proud about. And I think that's something that I've always loved to, one of these days, hopefully have an opportunity to do public speaking in front of large groups and talk on this subject. I think it's something I would love to do, and I have every intention of doing it down the road as time goes on. I like to talk about paying my way through college because you're in that business anyways, being in the education field, and I think that's something that everybody should be unbelievably proud of. With that said, let's talk about, put perspective on how things look different in collegiate sports in the fall. I think you touched on it, but why don't you go ahead and elaborate on that?
Sure. Again, it's ever changing, and if you have me on next week, I'll probably have a different, maybe a different, view on it. But as it sits today, and literally, had a 4:00 phone call with the Sunshine State Conference athletic directors, the 11-member institutions in our league, along with our commissioner, Ed Pasquay, because this week we did get some direction and some guidelines and some decisions from the NCAA. So what is going to happen, and this is public, and you can pull it up on the NCAA website, Division II, the Management Council and President's Council of NCAA Division II. Let me be clear, this is a Division II decision. They have made a decision to limit and to contract sports schedules. By that, I mean they made a decision to lessen the maximum number of allowable games played. To clarify it even further, in a sport, so each of the sports has a maximum allowable number of games. They have basically, I'll call it about a 30, here's your number again, this isn't by accident, 33% reduction across the board for minimum games that need to be played to have a sport and qualify for a championship, and they've taken down 20 to 35% on the maximum side. So now this was purely a cost savings measure, right? We're all concerned about enrollment. What's it going to look like? So from that direction, we are talking. So now we have some direction and somewhere we can go. So we know we're going to play less games. We know, and it's not going to be a competitive advantage. Barry is going to play the same amount of games, or can play the same amount of games as Nova Southeastern, as Lynn, as Tampa, as Rollins. Okay, so there's where the NCAA said, okay, now you go from there. I do think for the fall, though, and you heard me speak about it earlier, and I did touch on it, with an August 17th start date as far as our institution, with student athletes scheduled to move in the dorms for preseason physicals and training on the 7th, 8th of August, that is not too far away. So it's my belief, and I'm in some of these conversations both at a conference level and a national level, that I do think there's a really good chance that there's going to be a delay in the start of the seasons. So I think it's going to be pushed a little further into August and or September before, one, you're allowed to start practicing, and two, games will start being played. And just remember, the last thing I'll say on this, and you can ask me a follow-up, I mean, we're a non-football playing school, because I think they have a whole different deal to try to figure out. So for us, it's soccer, men's and women's soccer, women's volleyball, and men's and women's cross country. So we have about 125 athletes scheduled to come August 7th. But I think as time goes on, there's so much to figure out. I think there's going to be a delay in their seasons on the front side. But I believe we'll play.
Listen, if Major League Baseball can't figure it out right now, because they're still trying to figure it out. Okay, hockey's trying to figure it out. The NBA, what makes you guys think you're going to figure it out?
Well, exactly. And I say that, and somebody's going to have to jump in this pond again, right? I mean, someone's going to have to say, okay, just like the NBA made a decision to pull back, and then you see it happen. And I do have some inroads and, some contacts in Major League Baseball, but also at the NFL. I've had some conversations, with my friends down at the Miami Dolphins, and the Miami Dolphins train on our campus, so we have a very good relationship. The NFL is starting to come out. The MLB is coming out with some protocol for both players, so for us student athletes, staff and coaches, but also fans. What is that going to look like, right? So what are they going to do? And I know the Dolphins put some things out publicly. But again, I don't see a scenario where if pro sports can't figure it out, whoever that is, Major League Baseball, July 4th weekend, they're talking about, the NFL still says they're going to play in some version. I don't see where the NCAA, and they could prove me wrong, is going to figure it out or do it before, these professional sports leagues. I can see us doing it together, and I can see a likely scenario that football figures it out together. Big time football, Power 5 football might as well be NFL, right? I mean, there's a lot on the line. There's a lot on the line for that. So it's going to be very interesting. I've said all along, May is going to be a very, very important month, because now you're starting to get into topics of how long do we need to get kids, up to speed on their training, their nutrition, their fitness, their conditioning. Most argue that's at least a 4 to 6 week process before you're going to throw them in a volleyball game, a soccer game, or let alone a football game, right? So there has to be that window of time. So I think, I think across the board, because any of us, athletics is a big part of society. I know everybody wants to talk about it. I mean, we're in the business, so it's easy for us. But I hope it becomes a healing process for the country at some level. I don't want to compare it to, and I don't want to get into the how this compares. People want to talk about 9/11. I think it's so different on a lot of different levels.
Right.
But as far as a start and stop, and it had a stop and now it's got to start again, I do think it would be great for our communities. I think it's going to be great for our nation, if sports can start and play what I'm calling, meaningful games, right? Not just play it to play it, and safe, and with the health and safety of our staff, our students, in our case for sure, front of mind, and with the health and safety, even if it's an abbreviated season or a contracted season or less of a season than it normally is. I just hope we can get back sooner than later, because it's going to be great for everybody.
Okay, Mike, you brought up an interesting point, and I want to go ahead and get more information about this. I know the Miami Dolphins do train on your campus. And do you gain any kind of revenue from them? And what's your relationship been like throughout the years with the Miami Dolphins? I would assume that when they ultimately move down to Hard Rock Stadium, that at least the facilities that they've helped build can only help your situation out a little bit. So describe the relationship with the Miami Dolphins and Nova Southeastern University.
Sure. Yeah, no, it's a great relationship. They have their own, they have their own facility over there. It's very private, but it is right there on our campus. For those that are not familiar, it's located literally in our main campus. Our baseball field and our softball field sort of back up to the fields at the Dolphins. So they use it for everyday practice and training. They use it for coaches' offices. They technically only have a handful of people down at Hard Rock Stadium where they play their games. It's been a long-established relationship. Certainly goes before my time, but interestingly enough, you talk about a sports icon and someone that's made an influence. Not only worldwide in sports and worldwide in his business, but H. Wayne Huizinga, Mr. Huizinga, and I got the pleasure to meet him and spend some time with him before his passing. He was a member of our board of trustees. The School of Business is named after him. But when Mr. Huizinga owned the Dolphins, and at one time he owned the Dolphins, Marlins, and the Panthers, which is just unbelievable, he decided to with his relationships with Nova Southeastern, move and build the training camp on our campus, and I won't know the exact year, but it'll be sometime in that early 90s period, maybe 93, 4, or 5, somewhere in there. So that's when the Dolphins relationship started with Nova Southeastern. That is our campus, and there was, I don't know the details of the financials, but we do have a tremendous relationship with them. Not only from a collegiality or cordial thing, we support each other's programs. They support our special events, we support theirs, but we actually, one of the neat things we do with the Miami Dolphins, or we have done with this relationship, is that there's an allotted number of tickets for Miami Dolphins games for Nova Southeastern students. So we actually have a tailgate section, and you can go to the box office in our arena and get a ticket for the Sunday game. So there's those kind of things, and we it's been great. But they are building a new facility come January.
So will you be the beneficiary of having those facilities on your campus? Because I know when the Minnesota Vikings ended up moving into their new building up in Minneapolis, they upgraded the facilities over at the University of Minnesota. They were playing there. I mean, hey, listen, if it works out for you, where you're able to gain some capital out of this relationship that they put the work into it, why should you not be the beneficiaries of it?
Well, yeah, I will say the university will certainly be beneficiaries of the property. And again, they actually, again, I don't know the financials on that, but certainly the facilities they have are as good as many. In the NFL, they have an older indoor facility, so that's in question, an older bubble, soft-sided bubble. It's not, what I've seen in Tennessee or Cleveland, or I haven't been to Minnesota's, but I'm sure they have a beautiful. So, but, I mean, 170,000 square foot, facility. They got all the sports medicine. They have 2,500 seats. They got 2 beautiful fields. So, yeah, the university will definitely be a beneficiary. I would hope, we continue to have conversations that will, we'll have some of that, we'll be the beneficiary as far as we being athletics. Certainly the fields themselves, we have lost a couple fields just with the building of new residence halls on the other side of campus, which are just beautiful. We're down we used to have 3 fields, and now we have 1 really nice game field, but I would think soccer can move over there at some point. But again, there's the discussion of weight rooms and locker rooms and things like that. But that's yet to be determined by the executive administration of the university.
Do you have any memories of the late Don Shula? Did you ever have the good fortune of meeting him?
Yes, sir, I did, and he just gave me chills when he brought up his name, and you probably won't believe me, but I'm sitting at my office desk here, and I still have Sunday's, I guess it was the Sentinel, maybe it was a week ago, or the Herald, and I have that because I want to keep that, right? So I did on several occasions, and I was and still am friends with David, one of his sons, David Shula. He's a dear friend, and so through his son David, I got to meet Coach, and it wasn't so much with Nova and the Dolphins. It was post that, but it's just unbelievable. And of course, he has ties to Northeast Ohio and John Carroll University in Northeast Ohio, I believe. It was Painesville, Ohio, a small town near where I grew up, but. So we sort of had that, and again, just being around him. I've never been around somebody, and I've been around some big time, people in the athletic world. But Coach was, as humble as he was, kind, and always made you feel the most important person in the room. And I have a book signed that I keep on my bookshelf by him that he wrote with. Blanchard, Ken Blanchard, everybody's a coach, and I treasure that. I didn't get to see him recently, but it was pretty neat. Anytime when you had to be even in the same room as Coach, and he had this aura about him, and nobody commanded a room like him. And I know so many people, are going to miss him, but what a legacy he's left. And I received a text from his son, David. We were talking a little bit about week after his passing, and just a special, special man.
Well, I'm amazingly enough, Mike, I worked with Don Shula from 1982 to 84 at a weekly newspaper when I was going to school down here. And you want to talk about an intimidating presence, he was definitely it. Yeah. I learned under him. And listen, if you think you're intimidating at your age, try to take a 19-year-old kid in front of an icon like that, and you can magnify that to about 1,000,000 degrees. And then all of a sudden you sprain your ankle one time playing a soccer game with the Fort Lauderdale Strikers. And then Don Shula, you sit over at, I think it was St. Thomas Biscayne College at the time. Mm-hmm. And he liked me as he got to know me. I was just a young pup back then. And so one time he takes me in his office and he says, "Do you think I should cut you, or do you think I should put you on injured reserve?" And I said, "Coach, you know what? I'd rather you put me on injured reserve. That way I'm a part of the team." And he gave me that Shula grin from South Florida all the way to Alaska. And then when I had some private moments with him, I would ask him questions like, how do you get the best out of your players? And he always taught me a lifelong lesson that said, you know what, don't ask players to do what you can't do. Try to work with their strengths. And I have a lot of great stories, too, to talk about. I felt like this is a perfect time to address them. We got a few more questions I want to get to. Let's talk about you being an active member of the Orange Bowl committee. I know you were elected in November of 2004. How much do you enjoy doing that?
Oh, I enjoy it immensely. I wish I had more time, to be part of it. But I think I do what I can, to be part of that. But you talk about relationships and people that I've met through Orange Bowl, and back to Keith Tribble and now Eric Palms, who are the former CEO and this CEO now, Eric, and Mitch Morrow is a dear friend, and so that's some of the office staff on the Orange Bowl. But as far as the committee members, again, I already mentioned one name, David Shula, just the people that I've met, and were so welcoming. And, when I got involved, and I've been involved with, such things as probably the biggest thing, which really tied into, my position at Nova Southeastern was, we've been the host of one of the teams, that play in the Orange Bowl or the national championship, whatever year we have. And we've done that for several years now. So we host during that Orange Bowl week, we're a practice site for one of the teams that are going to play in the Orange Bowl game. So, I get the exposure to that, and that's sort of my give back to the community, if you will, during that time, and spend a lot of time with those teams. Met some just unbelievable, people through that. But the committee members, I would argue the Orange Bowl committee does as much for our community, the South Florida community, than anyone, and I'm just very proud to be part of and to be associated with that organization and the people within it.
Yeah, I hope to get more involved with them down the road with the Orange Bowl committee. Hopefully you can connect me with a couple people down the road if you don't mind. That would be great.
Absolutely, yeah. Larry Wall's the guy you want to talk to. Larry's, a long-time media guy. But, there's so many events. People think about the football game, but, I'm involved with some of their community events and we the basketball event that they host over at BB&T, we host a practice site for them. But it's a great organization, and again, it's about the people, but they make a tremendous amount of impact. And just a little plug for them, we will be hosting this year, and we will be hosting not only the Orange Bowl game, but we host the national championship this year in South Florida. So the Orange Bowl committee will be the host of the CFP national championship game. I don't have the date in front of me, but I would guess about January 10th or 11th. So that'll be all at Hard Rock Stadium. So we're gonna have a lot of fun come January when we get back to normal and host both those big games for the world to see.
Well, hopefully you can make that warm introduction with Larry Wall, and this will certainly be we'll do what we can to help him, but more importantly, our priorities with you guys as well. So with that said, well, hopefully we can do that. We'll see what happens on the road.
Oh yeah, no, we can do that.
So tell me, what do you feel is your biggest accomplishment and that you're most proud of at Nova Southeastern University? You don't think I don't give you loaded questions? I think after all this time, you probably know I do.
You got me. I don't know. I try not to think that way, but again, as I reflect back, and usually the summertime is, I'm I don't want to be cliche or anything. There's not one, because I think it's a culmination, of a lot of things. I talked about the sustainability of success. I'm very proud that we weren't just good in one sport for 1 year, and we had a great grade point average and great graduation rates in 1 year. So I'm most proud of one, the long time success that we have. And again, I don't want to come off arrogant, but it's not arrogant if it's true, right? Isn't that what they say?
Oh, absolutely not. Mike, all you're doing is giving an honest answer. There's nothing wrong with an honest answer.
To look at those banners, in the arena, and whether it's before a game or sometimes I just walk through there to go, to the other side of campus, I'm like, man, it's somewhat surreal. But quickly I turn to, I think the greatest accomplishment is the people, that our program, the people meaning student athletes and staff. I think I'm very proud of the fact that I think people leave there with an affinity. You said it earlier about with the affinity, but the affinity, the pride that you have in your college and your university. And again, the affirmation comes to me when I speak to alumni. It doesn't really come in that moment. Even when I was coaching, I have just such a different relationship with alumni. And if kids feel like they come back to a game or come back to this event, come back to the Hall of Fame, come back to homecoming, I'm very proud of that. So I don't know if that's a great description of, but proud of, and the people that have worked for me. We have a great coaching tree that has come up through, Nova Southeastern University, a great administrative tree that has gone on to do great things in college athletics. And I'm just very proud that, I was able to work with those student athletes and those people. So I guess it's those two things.
Well, you know what? If I were to ask anybody what an accomplishment is, okay, I know full well that there'll be an S on the end of it, and we'll be talking about accomplishments. So you've answered this exactly the way I expected to do it. And remember, you're dealing with the Motor City Madmouth. Hello. Okay. So
all right,
let's go ahead.
Remember that for the next time, man.
Oh,
we'll
you
talk
bet.
Some Detroit baseball. We'll talk some Detroit.
You bet.
Some guests on for you, man.
Oh, don't worry. This is just beginning of a lot of good stuff for us. So with that said, I'm going to ask you the one question I know you'll have no problem answering. But then again, you haven't had a problem answering. I'm giving you my best shots, and you've done a marvelous job. Okay.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome. So now I'm going to give you an opportunity to be a salesman, Mike. Okay, why should a student athlete come to Nova Southeastern University? We'll say student and then student athlete. It'll be two separate questions. But give me student and then student athlete. this is your chance to sell people, whether they're out of state, in state, wherever, okay, why they should be a Nova Southeastern University Shark. I'm letting you have the floor on this.
All right, I appreciate it. So first, as a student, it's not too hard to come down to Paradise, right? And even if it's for 2 years, 4 years, whatever you're looking at, graduate school, medical school, we have it all. So give it a shot and take a look at it and get mom and dad to at least bring it down on a trip, right? I mean, we're in Greater Fort Lauderdale, technically in Davie, but 15 minutes outside of Fort Lauderdale Airport, 13 miles from the beach. So it's a great place to be geographically, and secondly, the quality of education and the variety of education from your basic degrees in business, but we're so entrepreneurial in the way we approach delivering academics, from education to business to now medical and marine science. The last thing I would say there are facilities. Well, the last two things, facilities and faculty. I think it's second to none. I think I have a long history, not that I'm on that side of the world, but our facilities, our labs, our classrooms, our research centers. I mean, come be part of it, give it a chance, and I know you'll have a quality education and you'll have a lot of fun doing it. So that's my pitch. If I was to do a Nova commercial, there's a lot of great people. You can get involved. There's so much to get involved on campus, whether you're an athlete or not, clubs, organizations. It's just great. And I think you'll fall in love with it, and you'll probably fall in love with the area if you're not from here.
If you need somebody to go ahead and give you that commercial, you can dial me anytime you want. I'll make sure you get the very loud version of that.
Thank you. Yeah, so I'm a pretend marketing, wannabe anyway. So, but on the student athlete side, I mean, much of the same things that I've said, but I can tell you we have first class coaches, we have first class facilities, and we want to give student athletes a first class experience. So now we're going to give you the opportunity, but you got to come here and work for it, right? And we'll give you that opportunity, but it's going to be what you make of it. And again, I know that's an old school saying, but I stuck to old school, the mantra, and it depends what you want to do with it. If you want to come here and be the best that you can be, and that doesn't mean you're going to play in the major leagues or swim in the Olympics, but that can happen, and it has happened. 3 Olympians on our swim team. We got a lot of guys playing, basketball. But that shouldn't be your first and foremost. That's a means to an end. It's about getting your education. We will provide you a great experience, both as a student athlete, the way we expect you to handle yourself on campus, high expectations. We'll give you the most out of your experience, and we'll set you on your way for life. And with your degree, with your degree in hand. And if your dreams come true and play professional sports, you still have that degree. You still will have an edge, as we like to say. You'll still have an edge amongst your competition when you go out in that work world because you were a Shark.
Well, let me tell you this. I'm going to go ahead and give you a little something for your gift wrapping for you under accomplishments. Okay, we alluded, I'm going to say right now, one of your biggest things is being able to upgrade those facilities. I think that speaks alone in addition to the other things we're mentioning. If you want me to give you the old Cliff Notes version, that's what I've done in social media about the Nova Southeastern University Sharks. You ready what my Cliff Notes version is? Okay.
Yeah, I'm here.
It's a best kept secret in South Florida at your university.
Yeah, we've heard that. I use my comeback on that, Scott, is we're trying not to be that. And again, it takes time. It takes tradition. We're a young university. I don't know if I could do the math. I don't know if it's 58 years old. I mean, we've sort of just grew up. We were mostly a graduate, online program early on, and we still have the emphasis, which I think is a huge benefit. It makes us unique to the leveraging our graduate programs and our professional programs with our undergraduate program. But I can tell you that the other way I say that is we're not going to be the best kept secret for long.
Well,
and I hope athletics is providing that both regionally and nationally for our university.
But here's where I spin it to your favor, okay? If I go ahead and utilize all my followers and my cachet, it's my goal is to make sure it isn't the best kept secret in South Florida. So we can take the other way, and either way, you're the best kept secret that won't be the best kept secret for long, because that's our response, our job together to work collectively to make sure, indeed, not only does your enrollment go up, but also definitely want to feel like there's a great university out here, and we're going to continue to do our part collectively to make sure we get it done. So
I look forward to having you guys out, seeing you in person, having you on campus. We'll do some remotes. I mean, whatever you need. We're happy to be. We feel we're the hometown university, and come out and support the Sharks. And if you're down visiting, come be part of that too. We have kids from all different, parts of the country, all our different parts of the world. Our diversity is another one of our strengths, and I think that's also makes us unique. So I look forward to that day and being back on and, having you guys on campus when we resume, back in the fall.
Yeah, I'm very happy to feel like I'm a Shark now as well. Before we end the broadcast, I want to, why don't you let everybody know how they can get a hold of you, Mike, your university, any information you want people to know about?
I would definitely say the website. I think we do a great job. Is www.nova.edu, and then our athletics webpage is nsusharks.com. So nsusharks.com, you can get to the university website. So I would say that first and foremost is the way, and I think that's the way people are finding out, about the university. My information's on, on the website. My email is the best way to get a hold of me. And, always happy to talk to young people, whether you're a student or not a student. Maybe you just like athletics. Maybe you want to get into broadcasting and sports information communications. You don't have to be an athlete. I love, talking to students, athlete or not, and get them involved in sports athletics. There's a lot of good opportunities to do that. So, please, look us up, check us out, and come by and visit.
And let me add some other things, if I may. First of all, you can follow us. My Twitter account, my personal one is Scoop, SCOOP 33333. That's 5. As if you didn't figure it out, because I have the mentality of a journalist, being able to grill you like I did. And if that isn't good enough, you can follow us at Tribune South. And this will be another way where you're going to get Sharks information, because indeed your assistant sports information assistant athletic director, SID, Michael Stambaugh, does a great job keeping us in the loop. You can also find us on Facebook, South Florida Tribune, Instagram, South Florida Tribune, YouTube channel, for which Jim Crutchfield is on there. And our website is www.southfloridatribune.com. Our email is southfloridatribune@gmail.com. You can also find me on LinkedIn. My name is Scott Morganroth. You are listening to World Sports and News Network, WSAM, and you're listening to the Sports Exchange. To find these broadcasts, you'll be able to find them on Apple Podcasts, Spreaker, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and Google Podcasts. So there'll be plenty of ways to listen to this broadcast, and we encourage everybody to listen to them, download, because I'd like to think that, Mike, that you and I have done our best to try to give everybody a great overall in-depth university of what the Sharks Athletic Department, and it's been our pleasure to have you on the broadcast. So any other final thoughts?
Scott. No, my pleasure to be on, and I look forward to the next time. I appreciate you, promoting our program, our university, and I look forward to our building our relationship in the future. So thanks for having me on, and go Sharks.
Thanks as well to you, and a good credit to Michael Stambaugh. He's certainly been a big help with us getting it done. So on behalf of Mike Mominey, my name is Scott Morganroth from Motor City Madmouth. Thank you for joining us here on the Sports Exchange on WSAN Network. And we hope everybody has a great weekend, and we look forward to our continued relationship with the Sharks. Good evening, everybody.